You'll see that Americans going overseas are at 120% of 2019, but foreigners coming in just 80%. That's a huge gap. We need those people to come back. This chart looks at which segments are doing well: group business, transient business, or contract business. The important thing here is that only contract business is doing well. Why do you care about that? Because contract business is the lowest rated business. So those segments that charge more, group and corporate, they're just not doing as well. That might mean that a hotel near an airport, catering to airline stewardesses, or those are going to do better than what we see in some of the full-service properties in the US currently. This looks at performance by price tier, and it's the relationship between occupancy and ADR. And we'll give anybody that wants the slides, so just come find Celeste or myself after the presentation. You see that in the upper priced hotels on the right, they're doing slightly better, but occupancy is still declining. What happens when occupancy declines? You start to cut rate. So all three price tiers are showing a decelerating or negative trend. What this means is the softness is universal. Another issue, short-term rentals. They are at 200% of 2019 demand. So they are cannibalizing hotel occupancy. It's not just an occupancy issue. It means that if you have a special event in your market, a Taylor Swift concert, a Final Four, the Super Bowl, it means that every homeowner will push their inventory into the marketplace and absorb your demand, and you run the risk of losing your compression night, which is when you would charge, 200-300% a typical ADR, and that's when a lot of profit is made. Now, top line soft, we're getting cannibalized. What's happening to costs? This looks at three key costs: insurance, property taxes, and wages. All of those are growing faster than top line. What does that mean? On the right, you see your EBITDA margin, and you can see that for the second year in a row, EBITDA margins are declining. This is why it's extra important. If you have weak top line, if you have soft bottom line, you need to be extra, extra careful as you approach your project. Financing costs are high, so it's going to be more expensive to build your project. You can see they are coming down slightly. They're down about 60 basis points year over year, but still financing at nearly 7% is really elevated in a historical context. On the good news front, what you can see is the price per key. How much are you going to have to pay to buy this hotel? And you can see that going all the way back almost 20 years, there's been almost no pricing power. On a nominal basis and on a real basis, prices are down. That means that you're going to make your return when you buy your asset. You must buy well. There are assets in the market trading at below replacement cost, so make sure that when you identify your targets, you identify targets where the value is created on the front end. And that's what I've got for you. Who's next?
Great, thank you. Yeah, Dan, you're next. Yeah.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
I do have one question. I do apologize.
Oh, no worries. Dan's an expert. Come on up, Dan. He might have an opinion, too.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Christian Ellis. I'm part of the Virginia State University crew.
Nice. I'm a Virginian.
You're a Virginian?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'm a nutrition and dietetics student, and my major is housed within the Family and Consumer Sciences department. I'm interested in the human ecological aspects of pretty much anything that I come across. So when I'm hearing you talk about the Airbnb specifically, I guess my question is so I'm interested in housing as a concept. I have friends who have been housing insecure recently, as I'm sure a lot of us do, and they ended up staying in Airbnbs long-term and things like that. So it's like we have housing units that are taking up hotel occupancy. So I'm wondering, has there been any novel revenue streams for the hotel industry amid the crisis in housing? Does that make sense?
Meaning, are hotels somehow becoming housing themselves?
Yeah, I guess.
I think that, you guys might know better, but I think we've seen Hilton announce studio residential, which I think is their push into the extended stay. I think there's another concept called
Okay.
Water Walk, which, apologies if I'm going to get that wrong, but I think that's in partnership with Wyndham. Somebody can correct me. Anyway, I think that's half residential and half extended stay, and I think they flex up and down based on demand. If anybody's here from Wyndham and I've gotten that wrong, please raise your hand. So yeah, we are starting to see more creative concepts in extended stay.
Right.
So yeah. I
Yeah,
think-
okay, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Dan?
Okay, good morning.
Good question.
Where's the clicker? Good morning. There we go, okay. How does this work here?
Yeah, push the button, you should be good.
Yeah, I pushed the button. This button, right? Right here, the big green one.
The big green one.
Yeah, I'm pressing
Maybe
it.
give him a second.
You wanna-
Are you able to change? Right, but there should be another deck.
I gave you my deck. All right. I'm going to start because I actually, I thought I had 15 minutes. It says 10, and it's not going, so I'm going to talk and try to get my extra
Yeah, fire
5
away.
minutes.
Good.
I also have a fair number of slides, so I'm going to go through them really quickly. Same as Rachel, if you want a copy, feel free to just ping me, send an email, whatever. Happy to do that. Oh, here we go. Excellent. All right, and my attorney always makes me put this in. It's a disclaimer that basically says, don't believe anything I say and don't make any investment decisions on what I say. Okay, Rachel covered the economy just real quick. You know, it's interesting. I'm a big headline guy, so a lot of slides are gonna, show headlines for the past 6 to 12 months. And, it's really interesting as we go through this deck, right? There's a lot of chaos out there and a lot of mixed signals, right? Think about at the beginning of the year, even before Trump was inaugurated, the economy was doing pretty well. Then we had Liberation Day, right, and the world was falling apart. Then we had some wars in between, right? And now things are kind of looking a little bit better. So, and there's good news with the economy in terms of money, investment coming into the United States, which is always a great thing. I want to take a quick minute and talk about uncertainty because that seems to be a big buzzword these days. And these are the things that are causing uncertainty. I mentioned a minute ago: recession fears, inflation, wars. You know what? At the end of the day, us included, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. Never mind tomorrow and a week from now. So, something to keep in mind, right? Life is uncertain, right? Crossing the street is uncertain. I heard a term recently: transitory uncertainty. Does anybody know what that means? Good, because I don't know what it means either. And then, when I look back on my life, right, one of my earliest memories is when we had black and white TV and 6 channels, that after 11 o'clock the TV went off, right, and we really had news then. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, and then if you think about all the sort of black swan events that have happened since then, these were all oh my God moments. The world is coming to an end. You know what? The world never came to an end. So what we went through during Liberation Day and all the panic with the stock market, I mean, it's amazing how nobody really talks about that anymore. And then we were supposedly on the verge of World War III when, the Israel-Iran war, 12-day war happened, and we're not in World War III. So anyway, U.S. commercial real estate is a little bit of a mixed bag. Hotels, on a relative basis, are fairly favored when you compare and contrast them to office buildings. And I've been doing what I do for, like Rachel, 40 plus years. I don't remember ever that phenomenon that hotels were perceived as more favorable than office buildings. The travel industry, again, sort of a mixed review. Although on the lower right-hand side, we can see that United Airlines just issued a new forecast, and they're saying the world is less certain now, so less uncertain, excuse me. All right, the United States is going to be benefiting from some major events that will be occurring in the near future, from Olympics to soccer tournaments, and the United States is turning 250 years old, so there's going to be a lot of inbound traffic as well as Americans traveling abroad. Rachel touched upon the public companies. Again, a little bit of a mixed bag. If you look on the lower right-hand corner, just yesterday, Hilton lifted their profit forecast. I think the challenge when you look at public hotel companies and their earnings releases, they tend to be a little bit short-term in terms of vision. And I'm convinced that hotels are really fundamentally long-term investments, right? I believe that when somebody invests in a hotel, they should underwrite and be prepared, if need be, to hold on for at least 10 years. Doesn't mean you're going to hold on for 10 years. If a capital event opportunity occurs in year 3, 4, 5, you're going to take full advantage of it, right? But think about somebody who closed on a hotel September 10th, right? They didn't know what was going to happen the next day. Or somebody that closed on an acquisition of a hotel March 1st of 2020, right? You need some runway there in case some black swan events happen. And we know why, right? Daily occupancy and constantly changing room rates with technology being what it is. That's a beautiful thing in a rising market. It'll kill you in a down market. Real quick, I'm going to go through strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. I switched it around because I'm an optimist at heart, so I want to finish on a positive note. Right, transient demand, and this is sort of on a long-term basis. Transient demand and group demand, I mean, everything's relative in life. Rachel's point is well taken that we're seeing some softening. However, when you compare it to what happened during COVID and coming out of COVID, we've really rebounded nicely. New construction is definitely muted. It's hard to get construction financing, although there is money out there. I'm going to talk about that. There's a ton of debt and equity out there. Some folks say, oh, there's no debt, it's hard to get. It's not hard to get, it's just relatively more expensive today than it was 36 months ago, right? But if you look over a 40-year average, interest rates today are really not that high on a 40-year average. They are high compared to the recent past. These are some examples of, this is all this year, first half of this year, refinancings that have occurred. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. There's a lot of money out there. And the great majority of this is refinancing as opposed to acquisition, but there are acquisition, there are acquisition funds out there as well for the right deals. Right? Same thing with construction. This is all this year, these announcements of construction financing. Now, I'm not going to tell you there's a ton of it out there, and a deal has to make sense, but for the right deal, there is money out there. M&A activity, it occurred last year, it's happening this year. I found the IHG acquisition of Ruby to be interesting because I had never heard of Ruby before. Did anybody ever hear of Ruby before, the brand? No, okay, good, I don't feel so bad. There have been some, the transaction market has slowed, no doubt about it, but there have been some very significant large transactions led by the upper left-hand corner, the JW Marriott Phoenix Desert Ridge, traded for $865 million, or $900,000 a room. And then we've had a slew of trades so far this year at $100 million or more. And then when we look at per room price, right, there's some healthy numbers being paid for select assets. The announcement on the right, that was kind of interesting, the New York Mark Hotel, $1 billion offer supposedly, and that worked out to $6.6 million per key. And in my business, coming up with valuation, appraised values, I hope this deal comes through because then I'm going to be able to come up with any value I want in New York, but it's not going to come through, so don't worry about it. All right, when we look at the profile of who's buying hotel assets, again, this is all first part of this year, a bit of last year. I mean, this is a who's who of investors who know and understand hotel real estate, right? So the fact that they're betting on the sector speaks volumes, in my humble opinion. The AHLA, I don't know if there's anybody here from the AHLA, but I'm personally very grateful for what they do for the industry, and so I think that's a tremendous strength for us. Oh, there's no weaknesses, okay. Moving on to the weaknesses here, pricing power, and I know Rachel alluded to this, has definitely been soft. There's going to be charges now for integrity fees, for visas. I mean, the government does a good job trying to keep foreigners from coming into the United States. Consumer sentiment is definitely softening up, and there's a bifurcation, right? I mean, let's face it, the middle class is getting squeezed. the rich are getting richer, and those, unfortunately, who are on the poor end of the spectrum are getting poorer. And so that is a challenge for not just the industry, but the United States. Back to work, we hear all about it ain't happening as far as I'm concerned. And when you look at Counsel systems and their tracking of swipes going into office buildings, that number's been stuck at between 50 and 55% for as long as I can remember. Again, good and bad, right? It obviously is going to hinder corporate individual travel, but to counter that, there's a need for folks to get together, companies that are working remotely, because there's nothing like face-to-face contact. We all know about the labor challenges in the lodging industry. It's hard to get labor. Insurance going through the roof. We've actually seen situations where folks could not renew their insurance and were in violation of their debt covenant because they just couldn't get it. So that's a real challenge for the sector. It's not going away anytime soon. And then this country is littered with hotels that are starved for capital. And there's the brands all played nicely in the sandbox during COVID. That party's now over. And these renovations need to happen, and the fact that a lot of debt is getting matured at the same time that these PIP requirements are in place, you're going to have a lot of sponsors saying, you know what, I'm done. Get me out of this thing, either recap it or sell it. Anybody in this room, raise your hand if you think we need more hotel brands. There's got to be somebody in the room who thinks we need more hotel brands. No, I agree. Oh, there we go. We got one right over there. All right. I perceive this as a weakness because this is what we do every day for years and years, and I have trouble differentiating between a lot of brands. And candidly, without naming names, I've had franchise sales folks acknowledge to me off the record that within their own brand family, they couldn't tell me the difference between X and Y. So something to think about. Threats, I mean, we all know what's going on with Canadians, rebuffing coming into the United States. It's understandable, but let's face it, it's definitely affecting inbound international traffic into the U.S. That's the bad news. The good news is that Americans are also not feeling that welcome overseas, so a lot of folks are traveling domestically this summer. Geopolitical stuff never goes away, apparently, and this is just kind of a smattering of some of the headlines out there. I found on the left-hand side, 3 down, U.S. Space Force warns of mind-boggling buildup of Chinese capabilities. I didn't even know there was a U.S. Space Force, but it really is part of the Department of Defense, and I don't know, pretty wild stuff. Unionization, unions are good, bad, they are a fact of life, but the reality is that all things being equal, a hotel with union labor versus a hotel without union labor, it costs more to operate that hotel with union labor, and union activity is only continuing to expand within the lodging sector. Cyber risk is huge risk for the industry because think about all the data and information that is domiciled on the servers of hotel companies. COVID is supposedly over, and yet there's a headline back in June about some new variant that's out there, razor blades, so I don't know. Bird flu, measles, I mean, but if you think about it, any of this stuff mushrooms up the way COVID did, it could have a dramatic impact on the lodging industry. Rachel talked about this. Short-term rentals are definitely biting at the heels of the lodging sector, as is the cruise industry. Government intervention and government policies are a threat to the sector, and this is just, again, a smattering of some headlines as to the challenges that the industry is facing because of government regulation, led by the bottom one, $30 minimum wage in Los Angeles. I mean, that's a tough way to make business when you're in a market like that. I've heard some investors call LA uninvestable, if that's a word. Climate change, I don't understand why climate change is a political issue. It's happening as we speak. And here we are in Miami, and it's kind of interesting. I'm not an expert on this, but I've read and heard that in 20 years Miami could be, or a good part of it could be underwater. It's kind of interesting when you see all the activity down here. There's a tremendous amount of investment that has come in and still comes in, And yet, I've actually asked investors, like, how do you deal with that potential? And every single one of them says, oh, that'll be the next guy's problem. So one day somebody will be holding the bag. You know, another threat, I find this fascinating, supersonic transport. You remember the Concorde? You could fly to, New York to London in 3.5 hours, and then it was gone for 20 years. Well, guess what? It's back. Supersonic transport. It's been perfected in terms of the noise associated with it, the boom, and fuel efficiency, and just being friendly to the environment. So, rocket engine that'll take you from LA to Tokyo in 2 hours, right? Think about that. Or a $20 trillion tunnel linking New York and London in 54 minutes. That is not a good thing for the lodging sector, right? Because you can get up in the morning, say goodbye to your kids, put them off to school, go to London, have a meeting, lunch, what have you, and come back and be home in time to put your kids in bed, right? Not great for the hotel industry. Opportunities, it's funny, back during the great financial crisis, when that's really when OTAs, online travel agencies, came into the fore. And the hotel sector, which has always been slow to embrace technology, embraced OTAs thinking it was the greatest thing since Swiss cheese, until they realized, like, wait a second, what did we just do? We gave up control of our most precious commodity, heads and beds. So we've had that tug of war going on, where hotels are trying to, get control of the reservation back, and they are succeeding, and pretty soon the anticipation is that direct bookings will lead over OTAs. Other opportunities are partnerships. It seems to be a big thing in the sector these days. Hyatt with Peloton, I believe McLaren just announced one. No, they renewed with Hilton. And then always, every hotel company and brand is trying to come up with a differentiator. So I found the one on the upper left-hand corner sort of interesting. Hotel offering self-love pods for solo, never mind. Anyway, that's not my thought, that was published. Other opportunities, there's, like I said earlier, a ton of money out there, and this is smattering of announcements of groups that have raised money to invest in the sector. Most recently, Peachtree, who's very active, just announced a $250 million special situations fund. And then there's no shortage of hotels out there that are distressed, not necessarily from a market perspective, but from a capital structure perspective. And what's interesting about this slide is you have some big names on here, Blackstone, Starwood, right? Generally, these guys have great batting averages, but they're not perfect, right? And so they have hiccups every so often, too. So there's a whole slew of deals that have come to the market and will come to the market that are, quote unquote, distressed. Urban markets are really where there's tremendous opportunity, because if you think about it, during COVID, they're the ones that were the dogs that used to be the darlings. They're slowly becoming darlings again, and you can buy assets way below replacement cost in downtown urban markets. Other opportunities, San Francisco. I just want to talk a second about San Francisco. It's getting, in my humble opinion, getting a really bad rap. Yes, it's a tough market, but I also think that's the place to put money right now. San Francisco is a beautiful city. It's a gateway to Asia. Unless you think it's going to literally fall into the Pacific Ocean, I don't think it's going away. It's going to come back. And you look at investors like EOS, right? They're smart and sophisticated. They've made several bets in San Francisco, buying assets at fractions of replacement cost. Within 10 years, you mark my words, those will look like great opportunities. The hotel business is expanding, trying to leverage brand equity and getting into safaris, cruises, et cetera, et cetera. Other opportunities, the hotelization of commercial real estate as well as multifamily. There's a building in Manhattan, a brand new office building, One Vanderbilt. It's an amazing building. It's an office building, but you walk in there and you attend meetings in there and meet folks. You feel like you're in a hotel in terms of the way that you get handled. And so it kind of amazes me that the hotel industry has not gotten into the business of managing office buildings, because who knows better how to be hospitable than hotel folks. Anyway, AI, I don't know much about AI, but obviously there's a lot of talk about it, and it's happening as we speak, and there's going to be tremendous opportunities. There are tremendous opportunities in the sector, and we just had the first AI-powered hotel open up in Las Vegas, the Autonomous Hotel. Mercedes is working on a concept to create a car that the inside feels like you're in a luxury hotel room. I mean, just really kind of interesting stuff. Hilton is exploring out-of-space opportunities. I'm not sure I'm going to be around when that actually happens. I hope I am. But, and then my final thought is, Kristen said this is not a public service announcement, but he's one of the smartest guys in the sector. And you know, as we were coming out of COVID, if you read the yellow highlight at the bottom, it really speaks volumes. And I concur with the fact that, listen, as we went through COVID, the world obviously changed and people's perspective on life changed, right? And they realized that life can be short, so enjoy it while you're here. And even pre-COVID, it was every American's God-given right to go on vacation, whether they could afford it or not, right? And there's no doubt about it. People are traveling more and more and more. It's not going away, and that's great for the hotel industry. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dan. While John's slide's getting teed up and so forth, by show of hands, how many of you in 2030 will be taking that 60-minute jet flight from, I assume, LaGuardia to London? Well, the 5 of you that raised your hands, a common attribute is you're a lot younger than I am, because I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Just another couple of quick thoughts. And Rachel and Dan have both touched on it, and I suspect John may touch on it as well. A question for the audience. When you're uncertain about something, what do you do? Ask questions. Any other thoughts? Wait. Who said wait? You wait. I agree. Well, you're 2 for 2 today. That's good. Yeah, I mean, if you cannot do anything, I would argue that the normal human response is let me just wait until whatever it is I'm uncertain about goes away or at least begins to dissipate so I can begin to figure out how I want to move forward. And again, we've talked about it a lot already, but there's a lot of that out there, but it does seem to be slowly dissipating. The third question is, for the students in the room, what do you need to have if you want to make a trip away from home? Don't think too deeply. These folks know I'm not capable of asking hard questions. Huh? Money. So resources, right? And what? Those, you got it. This table got it right here. You need to have the economic resources to make the trip, and you need to have the time. And I would argue if you look at the demographic profile of not just the U.S., but many markets around the globe, what you find is there's more and more people that have those 2 critical resources. Not everybody, obviously, but a growing number of people are going to have the ability to make that trip away from home because they have the money to do so, and critically, they have the time to do it. So, John, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name's John Lancet. I'm the Senior Managing Director of HVS. I'm based here in Miami. I focus on feasibility studies and appraisals. I'm our practice leader for the Southeast region and the Caribbean. In a couple months, I'll be celebrating my 30th anniversary with HVS. I'm a graduate of FIU, the FIU Hotel School here in Miami. And Rachel had stated earlier that she started in housekeeping, I believe it was, and I worked my way through school, and I started as a reservations agent back in the day, I think, when you would call on a phone and talk to a person to make a reservation. So that was kind of my start into the industry. So as you all consider investment in the hotel space, I'm going to provide you with some metrics of hotel transactions, specifically of limited service hotels in the eastern United States. And the metrics I'm going to provide you with are for individual hotel transactions, so they exclude portfolio transactions. So here's a slide of, this is a 10-year perspective for the eastern US. and it shows the current average sales volume and this is specifically for limited service hotels. So the sales volume is now approaching about $5 billion in sales, and that's compared to about $4 billion in sales between 2015 and 2020. This provides us a perspective of the overall transaction volume in the eastern United States. It's about $4.7 billion. The average price of limited service hotels in the eastern United States was roundly $99,000, and the average cap rate for these transactions was 9.6%. This is a 10-year perspective for the Southeast region. And it indicates that sales volumes are settling in at about $3 billion. In the Southeast, in the last 4 quarters, 350 hotels traded at an average price of about $97,000 a key, and an average cap rate of 9.6%. To give you a perspective of the overall sales volume in the eastern United States, sales transactions in the Southeast represented about 62% of the sales in the eastern region. This is a snapshot for the Mid-Atlantic. It shows that sales volume has been relatively choppy, with sales volumes falling short of about $1 billion. For the Mid-Atlantic, 98 hotels traded at an average cap rate of 9.6% and an average sales price of $79,000 per room. The Mid-Atlantic transactions represented about 17% of the sales volume for the eastern United States. Here's a snapshot for the Northeast. It shows that sales volumes are settling in at about $1 billion. And in the Northeast, 86 properties traded at an average price of room of about $140,000 and an average cap rate of 9.5%. So I shared these cap rates. These cap rates for the region are elevated. You know, we're in the mid-9s. And then just for perspective, the sales volume in the Northeast compared to the eastern United States is about 20%. I wanted to give you just a highlight of where the money's going. The hot markets in the Southeast for transactions are Atlanta, South Florida, Nashville, Tampa, and Charlotte. In the Mid-Atlantic, it's DC, Philly, and Pittsburgh. And up in the Northeast, it's the New York City Metro, Boston, and New England. I want to close with just, I ran this data or this query recently. So one thing is the buy, right? And I echo Rachel's sentiment as to buy sensibly, right? You're going to make your money on the buy. But these price points that I gave you on a per room basis, you have to consider that you're going to have to incur some additional expenses for PIP. So as the brand mandated improvements to the property following the acquisition. So those baseline, the price per room that I provided you is the baseline case because your cost basis will have to include that PIP. So what I did review was, I looked at Florida, and I looked at Florida to say, okay, of all the investment dollars that are coming into Florida, are we putting more money into the acquisition of existing properties, or are we putting that money into the development of new properties? And it's clear we're spending more money on the development of new properties in Florida than the acquisition of existing properties. And the top 5 markets for new development in Florida of limited service hotels, Orlando is the top market. It's followed by Jacksonville. Then third place is the Fort Myers Metro. Fourth is Tampa. and the fifth is the Panhandle. And I got to say, I'm starting to get quite a few inquiries regarding the Panhandle. It's pretty hot right now. So as you consider your investments in the hotel space, I'd love to be considered a resource for you. Feel free to reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, John, and thank all the panelists. One thing I'd want to point out, and then also to give our panelists a heads up, I want to get some, hopefully, questions from the audience, but I want to conclude with each of you, if you were in the student shoes and getting ready to start your professional career in our industry, either what types of opportunities you think you'd look for, or long-term, what do you think the outlook is in terms of career opportunities in our space? I would point out on the short-term rental questions, everybody talked about it, it's at least one of the ways I look at the industry is it really starts with demand, or it starts with the customer. If you don't have any customers, nothing else matters, right? So when we look at the short-term rental space, and Rachel had a lot of the data up there from a firm called AirDNA, if you took the number of rooms sold in traditional hotels, added to that the number of short-term rental units that were occupied on an annual basis, early in our career, the short-term rental piece was well below 5%. It's only a guess because we don't know, okay? But when Airbnb started and so forth, it began easier to understand what was out there. Today, demand in short-term rentals is 15% of all demand for rooms away from home. So you think about that, it gets back to, so the customer base continues to grow, and I look at that as a good thing. It's a competitive threat to traditional hotels, but something we need to be sensitive to. So, questions from the audience? Yes.
Oh, hello, everyone. I'm Jasmine Wilkerson. I'm a student at Morgan State University, hospitality management major. And my question goes to when someone is trying to develop or they're looking for an area of where they want to build their hotels. I know that you were stating in the Miami area in like 30 years, they were like, oh, Miami's gonna be underwater. Do you think that is an effect on someone that's trying to look at the longevity of how their hotels will be developed or owned in that specific area?
Yeah, on Dan's point, earlier point, you know, on the underwriting of an asset, whether it's the development of a new one or the acquisition of an existing one, is kind of looking at the 10-year horizon, right? So it's really understanding the demand generators in that market and the upside of those demand generators and their ability to put heads on beds at the end of the day, right? But assuming that 10-year holds, right? You want to make sure there's stability in those demand generators, so then after that 10-year holds, you're able to sell out to another prospective investor. So I think investigating the demand generators thoroughly, understanding their growth and their stability, and understanding the risk of that potential exit is something you would have to consider. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would also say it's very easy to just call your insurance broker and get a quote before you even begin due diligencing the project. I mean, if you can't get insurance or if it's cost prohibitive, then move on right away. It's a free, 10-minute phone call. Yeah?
By the way, one of the nicest people in our business happens to be sitting here, and I'm going to ask him a question next. So just so you're ready. Okay.
Study. Hello, my name's Amaru. I'm an incoming third year at BU studying hospitality real estate. And my question is, based on current markets like capital markets and interest, how is that being affected by asset managers today?
I'm sorry, could you ask that one more time? I didn't catch that at the back end of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so based off current markets like capital markets and interest rates, I understand that it affects deal flow for hotel owners, but I want to know how that affects asset management companies.
Asset management companies. Yeah. Go ahead. You want to take a stab at that?
I mean, asset managers can help you recapitalize your asset if that's, they will give you an opinion on your capital stack, on refinancing, and is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but I'm asking, how does that affect like their line of business?
Okay. I'm not sure it would, other than, that is a service that your asset manager traditionally would provide you with. Advice not just on the operations, but on the capital stack.
Yeah, but does that I know that it affects deal flow for like the hotel owner, but does that affect their line of business as well? Because
It would be more in demand because we can provide consulting to what other options are available.
yeah.
My sense, you might be covered, if I was going to have a career in asset management, given market dynamics in your outlook, is that a field that we think there's a lot of growth potential? Is it contracting, or is it doing something else? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, at a high level, I think we're talking about elevated interest rates currently. On a historical level, it seems to be reasonable, but when you have these higher interest rates, it's impacting your margins to the owner, right? So then there's more opportunities, or there's opportunities for asset managers, because those hotel owners are starting to feel the squeeze, and they want those asset managers to help improve the operating margins of the hotel. So I think there's opportunities there. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
We can talk more about it offline. Yeah.
I would just make sure also, though, that you have a good, solid experience on site. Like, I think that would, if you're looking to enter asset management, I think having on-site experience is going to be necessary.
I would just add that we're seeing more, as time goes on, more and more institutional money coming into the space on the debt and the equity side. And listen, a lot of these folks know about real estate, and they know enough about hotels from an investment perspective, but not necessarily from an operational perspective. And let's face it, they need somebody to represent them, owner's representative, to oversee the day-to-day operator to make sure that they're maximizing revenues and minimizing expenses. And the last thing I would say, too, is I think that's a good question that you asked. I always think about artificial intelligence and how that's going to maybe ultimately replace every human's job. And so I think it'll be a longer time period before AI can replace what an asset manager does, as opposed to a reservation agent.
Okay. Vinay is, beyond just being an incredibly nice human being, is a leader in industry. He's got a lot of long history of success in our business. So I'm just curious, what are you thinking about nowadays?
I'm just standing up there and talk over here. I don't know what I'm thinking these days, Every time I go to a conference and I hear Mark, this happens today, next week I'll be at a different conference, or a week from now, or whatever else, and you get a different thing here. But I think that at the end of the day, and I know that you guys are all wanting and interested in the hospitality industry, and I was telling somebody yesterday that it really is a fun business, and you got to look at it in that perspective. And yes, you'll make money, and money is important, and don't get me wrong, you got to pay your bills and everything. So, just when you come to these conferences, and what am I thinking right now, and I'm sitting here in the audience and saying, hey, look, it's going to be a good business. It is, and I've been in the business for 30 years. You have your ups and downs. Sadly, the downs these days gets worse and worse. I still remember my first one was 9/11. Then the financial crisis in 2007-8 got even worse. And COVID was the worst of the worst. So I'm like, how bad can it be? We've already survived all this stuff. So, but my outlook is positive, but you just got to be smart. You just can't act dumb. I hate to say it like that, but you can't be acting dumb.
Great, thank you. Panelists, if you would, if you were a student getting ready to graduate, start your career, would you be happy today? Would you be sad today? What kind of opportunities might you be looking for? Rachel, can I put you on the spot first?
Yeah, sure. I think what's great about hospitality is that it has over 100% turnover a year. And so if you're good at all, if you're willing to put in above average effort, you will rise to the top very, very quickly, because there are vacancies every single day. So anytime you show up to work, somebody's not there, put me in, coach, I got this. I'm here, let's do it. I mean, I think I rose to GM in 3 years, maybe 4 years. I mean, what other industry can you go from housekeeper to GM in 5 minutes? So turnover is your friend, as sad as that sounds, but you better be ready to work. Every night, every weekend, you are there to hustle with a smile on your face. I've got this.
Thank you, Rachel. John?
It was interesting, I heard you say you're in hospitality management, and you had mentioned from Boston that you're involved with real estate, right? And I think for the students is, yes, part of your curriculums is going to involve hospitality management, the management of hotels, but don't lose sight of the fact that hotels are real estate investments, right? And there's a lot of opportunities in the analysis of these types of investments. So open your eyes to the opportunities that might be beyond just the management of a hotel and looking at it and possibly analyzing the real estate and the values of those assets.
Thank you, John. Dan?
So actually, I realized that I didn't even introduce myself because Mark had asked the lady over there, who are you? So who am I? Anyway, and I didn't give any background, but I graduated hotel school, worked for Hilton for a number of years in operations at the New York Hilton Hotel, Midtown Manhattan, 2,000-room property, amazing learning laboratory. I went through every sub-department within the front office, every sub-department within food and beverage, and then ultimately got kicked up to the catering sales office. And after a couple of years in operations, I had an epiphany in that I figured out that I love the hotel business, but I did not want to make a career working in hotels. However, listen, there are lots of folks who do what we do and are on the investment side, asset management side, who've come into the space without a hotel educational background and or hotel operational experience, many of whom have done very well. So it's not a requirement, right? But it's a real specialized property type, and I would encourage any young person who's interested in the lodging sector, whatever you want to do within the sector, outside of operations, right? Get some operational experience, because there's nothing like, I mean, actually working when I graduated, I graduated Cornell University, Ivy League school. The first thing I did at Hilton was, the day after I started, the gentleman who ran the beverage storeroom, 3 stories below grade, was going on vacation. Big burly guy with the belt and all, and I was like the skinny, scrawny kid. And the F&B director said, he's going on vacation for the next week. Go spend a day with him, and then you're running the beverage storeroom. I had no idea what I was doing. Anyway, hotel operational experience, I think, is important. I would also just add that 2 things in terms of career. We all have, everybody in this room, is our reputations. And reputations they take a long time and a lot of effort to develop a good reputation. It's incredibly easy to destroy your reputation by making one wrong move. So I'd be focused on that. And there was one more thing I wanted to say. Yes, failure. I used to not do very well with accepting failure. And then as I matured, I'm still maturing, I came to realize that failure is okay, and you learn from your mistakes. And the goal is not to make the same mistake twice. If you do, okay. If you make it 3 times, you're kind of out. But learn how to embrace failure and recognize that those are learning opportunities. And I have 2 grown boys, and my wife and I, raising these boys, always said to them, it's okay, you fall down, you get up, you dust yourself off, and you go at it again.
I would also just say very quickly, you guys are on the right path. I mean, it's no surprise that all 3 of us went to hotel school.
Actually,
like we started in hotel school, yeah.
As did I many, many years ago. Please join me in thanking our panelists for their insights.
Thank you. That was Industry Review and Outlook, Statistically Speaking, brought to you by Aimbridge Hospitality. Those presenters were Mark Woodworth, John Lancet, Rachel Rothman, and Daniel Lesser. Our next session features Ms. Ashley McNeil, Vice President of Federal Affairs for American Hotel and Lodging Association. She'll be discussing Washington legislative policy updates, lobbying in Washington, D.C., and education, our legislatures on issues that affect our industry. Please welcome Ms. Ashley McNeil.
Good morning. Thank you, Dan, for the compliments. Washington has been quite busy this year. This is one of the fastest moving federal policy environments in recent history, and a lot of their activity has negatively impacted our industry unintentionally. The president has signed 170 executive orders across regulation, workforce, and immigration. Thousands have been laid off by the federal government. There is no longer government travel. Uncertainty with tariffs have increased operational costs. Thousands have been deported, and there are ICE raids on a daily basis with a goal of deporting 3,000 people per day. J-1 visa interviews were paused, and student social media profiles have been scrutinized. There have been several travel bans on various countries, and the elimination and punishment for those who support and encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a reduced federal funding for critical travel initiatives and programs that boost our industry. All of these things and the rhetoric and uncertainty has contributed to a reduction in international travel and has slightly slowed domestic travel, which impacts the bottom line. But lawmakers often don't understand the impacts of their decisions, and many do not understand how complex our industry is. So it's up to us to educate them about how their decisions affect real people and real businesses. And advocacy is not just for me or my colleagues at AHLA or other government relations professionals. It's best if it comes from you. Congress cares about their constituents, and they respond to the everyday stories. So I implore you, if you have not already, build relationships with decision makers at the local, state, and federal levels in your hometown. So when critical issues arise, they know and trust your perspective. If you're not speaking with your elected officials, I promise you someone else is, and they likely don't have the same priorities. Your story is your power. Due to the new environment, the AHLA Government Affairs team has been quite busy this year, educating new members of Congress and their staff, reminding old members what our priorities are, playing defense on policies that are detrimental to our industry, aggressively going after policies that benefit the industry, and getting to know the new players in town. Most recently, we achieved some significant wins in the tax bill. To highlight a few from this list, one provision would allow hoteliers to fully deduct eligible assets like furniture, software, and other property upgrades the year they're put into service. Another benefit provides tax relief and helps lower the cost of borrowing. The last one I'd highlight helps spur economic development in disadvantaged areas through favorable tax structures. These things are critical to our industry and benefit the downstream impact of our industry. If you employ H-2B visas or are considering using them to help boost your workforce, last month the Appropriations Committee passed an amendment that would allow employers to exempt the highest number of H-2B visas that they've received in the last 5 years from the 66,000 cap. We have a long way to go before that becomes law, but it's a huge first step to support properties who rely on a seasonal workforce to aid their day-to-day operations. There's been a lot of movement in the immigration space. Temporary protected status has been revoked from Venezuelans and Haitians. The Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan program, which is for humanitarian parole, has also been revoked. That alone impacts over 500,000 people in this country. Now, a judge blocked this for now, but it could change tomorrow or next week. I encourage you to get involved. This is just a snippet of the issues that AHLA has addressed this year. And we have no idea what's to come, but trust that AHLA is in the rooms, having conversations with everyone, letting them know what our industry needs, sharing what is detrimental to our industry, and finding ways that we can work together. But again, I urge you, connect with your elected officials. Today's city council person is tomorrow's senator or congressperson. And I would be remiss if I didn't encourage you to join AHLA, the leading voice representing every segment of the hotel industry. And please contribute to our bipartisan political action committee. It allows us to strengthen relationships, maintain a seat at the table, and keep our industry priorities top of mind for elected officials. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. Oh, sorry. I would get to know your local officials, the teachers, your city council person. I would get involved in student government. I would intern at either on the Hill or in your local state legislature. You'll get to learn the players, you'll build an amazing network, and you'll be able to share some of the things you're learning in your hospitality programs.
Good morning, Jasmine Wilkerson, Morgan State University. This question is more so for you. Like, how do you keep your voice? You know, being both minority, a woman, someone that's like high end, and you have all these things that's going around, especially with the bills and things like that, especially in the DC area. Like, how do you keep your voice, and how do you stay heard so where that they're taking you, you know, serious, or you're not in that where it's like, oh my gosh, I could be next, you know, like, how do you as a woman, you know, will give advice to us in that type of setting?
Great question. I think it's really important to build your network, and that starts yesterday, that's today, that's who you're meeting right now. Make friends. People like likable people, and people want to see likable people succeed and survive. So I would build some of the people I have the best relationships with, I went to college with, or I worked with them 10 years ago, or they helped me get a job, or I helped them get a job, or I mentored someone. Building your network is so incredibly important for your future. And I would make sure that you intentionally use your voice. There's a strategy of when you speak up and when you don't, when you listen and when you're learning. So I would be just very intentional about where you are, who you're around, and when you're choosing to speak up. Because if you speak up all the time and you speak up and you're wrong, people are less likely to listen to you moving forward.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Siobhan Johnson, student from the University of the Bahamas, Bachelor of Hospitality Management. My question to you would be, what advice would you give international students pursuing further experience inside their field? Given the current political and the challenges that we're having in America, would you say it's something that would be feasible, or is it something that you should wait?
I think you should take advantage of this opportunity. There are a lot of people from international countries who are not coming to work to the United States on purpose, and that leaves a big opening for you. So every crisis that we have, find an opportunity and take advantage.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh.
Hi, my name is Eddie Jackson. I'm a student at Morgan State University, major in hospitality management. And I saw that one of the wins that you saw about the Big Beautiful Bill Act was economic development while in economic disparaged neighborhoods and communities. And as someone who wants to get into hotel ownership and real estate development, how do you do that while not actively pushing out those communities from, you know, the places that they have, you know, historical backgrounds?
What was that last word you said?
How would you economically develop a neighborhood and everything like that without pushing out the communities that have historical backgrounds in that neighborhood?
That's a hard question. As not a real estate professional, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm confident you can find someone here that can help you with that.
Thank you.
Jasmine Wilkerson again. I just wanted to know, as students, what programs or opportunities do you have with AHLA that can give us the opportunity to, you know, work with you all or get behind the scenes so that we can learn more about that industry as well?
Well, we have a summer internship program, so please find me so you can apply for next year. We also have a foundation that is a lot of wonderful work that you can also internship with.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's all. Thank you, Ms. McNeil. Let's give her a round of applause. Our next session is Checking In, Doing Industry Business Collectively. Our moderator, Dr. Andy Ingram. Our panelists, Rosanna Mayetta of AHLA, Jeff Freeman of U.S. Travel, KP Patel, Chairman of AHOA. While they're heading to the stage, we also want to remind you that we have corporate suites, so you can visit Choice, Marriott, Hilton, U.S. Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, in the corporate suites in Orchid and Gardenia.
Hi, Sarah. Jeff is on the end. Good morning. You guys are still asleep. This is Miami, full of life. Good morning. Let's try it again. Listen, we have an interesting discussion, a bunch of friends on stage talking about the industry and collectively working together. I hope you've read everybody's bio, but I'm going to ask everybody to take about 1 minute, talk about them, the organization, and how it fits into what we do in this room, and that is to create a great industry. Rosanna?
Good morning. Great to be here. Thank you, Andy. Rosanna Mayetta, President and CEO of HLA. We represent every segment of the hotel industry and bring them together to advocate on behalf of advancing the industry in Washington and around the country.
Good morning, everyone. My name is KP Patel. I have the honor of serving as HOA's chair. We're 20,000 members strong. Our membership owns over 60% of every single hotel in this country. And much like Rosanna, we're always trying to advocate on making sure that our industry is protected.
KP didn't mention his suit, which is a damn good suit. I could not pull that off, but I want to say that's pretty damn good looking.
Fashion statement, Jeff.
What's that?
It's KP is a fashion statement.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed. Jeff Freeman with U.S. Travel Association. We represent the totality of the travel industry, airlines, cruise line, rental car, attractions, hotels, and every convention and visitors bureau from coast to coast. You can imagine with a group that diverse, there's not a whole lot they all agree on, but the one thing that unites everybody in our membership is we want to grow the travel pie. How do we increase travel to and within the United States, international inbound, domestic leisure, transient business, group travel, all of those things are where we're focused. How do we grow the pie so each of you can kill each other for your fair share?
Fair share. You talk about fair share. We're in the greatest industry in the world. I tell people every day. We hear about studies, we hear about competition, we hear about supply. But Ashley just got off stage talking about how important it is for us to be legislatively involved, locally, nationally. Roseanne, we do 1, 2 trips a year to DC to go and talk to our lawmakers about what they need to do to ensure that we continue to employ people and keep our industry strong. What do we need to do as members? How can they help?
We need to do more. Frankly, it is such a difficult environment that we're operating in right now. You know, and if you think about the world of social media and members of Congress and how busy they are and how many people are going to see them, we need to be in their face a whole lot more than we are right now. And I think if you take a look at the depth and breadth of our industry, we could be so much more powerful than we are now. I think we've made a lot of strides, to be sure, in the last decade. But for an industry that has a hotel in every congressional district, it's still very shocking when you talk to members of Congress that you have to start from scratch and talk about owners, brands, management companies. They don't get it. And that I think is an opportunity for us to show up more aggressively and more often. And I think all of us joining forces whenever we can to have 1,000 people showing up on the Hill is important. We're still only showing up in, you know, the 10s and the 20s and a couple of hundred at a time. We should be storming the Hill in the most positive of ways.
You know, Jeff, how important is it for us to have a collective voice on the Hill and, more importantly, locally? All politics are local.
Yeah, I think too often within our industry, we're seen as the individual parts. We're seen as airlines, who, by the way, are not the most favored aspect of the industry. We're seen as airlines, we're seen as theme parks, we're seen as hotels. But let's face it, nobody gets on a plane. Few people stay in a hotel for the sake of staying in a hotel. They're there to do business. They're there to spend their money at the restaurant, at the local attraction, at the local drugstore because they forgot things at home, right? We are the industry that facilitates so much more. And I think when we only operate in our individual silos, we allow those legislators to see us in a much smaller way, a much smaller capacity than we actually are. The collective of this industry is something powerful in and of itself and what we enable beyond us. And I think that's a story we could tell more effectively. But operating as an industry, and our relationship with Rosanna in particular at AHLA, with our counterparts in the airline industry and the restaurant industry is quite strong. We work together at a federal level, I think reasonably well. I think as we get to a local level, we probably lose some of that connection, and we'd be a lot stronger as an industry if we tried to maintain that.
KP, we talk about the local level, as Jeff said. You and I spend a lot of time talking to individual Congress people. As a matter of fact, I'm hosting 2 on Saturday night here at the hotel since they're on break. You know, locally, and we're going to keep this on time. I'm going to keep looking at my timer. The timer's not working now, but we're going to keep looking at it to make sure we stay on time. But, you know, what do we need to do? I mean, you and I spend a lot of time in the community talking because our members are really local for us. What else do we need to do to make sure they take the message to Capitol Hill or state houses or commission meetings? We had 2 commissions yesterday.
So one of the things AHOA has implemented is what we call back of the house. We actually have our local elected representatives come to our properties, tour the property, bless you, tour the property and see what it actually takes to run a hotel day-to-day operations-wise. We've had multiple state representatives, federal representatives come by, and they do everything to get a hands-on experience. Cleaning rooms, folding towels, front desk check-ins. That right there gives you 2 opportunities. Opportunity 1 is obviously you're starting to get to know your representative on a one-on-one basis. Second thing, they see what it actually takes to run and operate these properties of ours. And third, which actually is 3, we're employers. We create jobs. They need to understand that, and there's no better way than that one-on-one interaction.
You know, the market continues to expand and grow. Sometimes we hear negative stories and positive stories. I'm one of those guys that's always positive. Jeff, from your perspective, in spite of what we hear about the competition in the lodging industry, any thoughts about our growth, and is it going to be okay? I want to depend on you to help us make some money here.
So the irony is, everywhere I've been, I've always been known as kind of the negative Nelly pessimist. And I've kind of worn that with a badge of honor. And that has shifted in this role and in this situation in which we find ourselves. Here are two things about travel that are indisputable. One, and it's beyond travel, just about the global economy. The global middle class is increasing every single year. It's growing. The number of people around the world and in the United States with the means to travel is growing every single year. That's indisputable. Number two, also indisputable, coming out of the pandemic, people around the world, particularly Americans, have placed a greater value on travel, on experiences, on memories, than they have on goods. I mean, just go ask somebody at Best Buy what their TV sales look like, what things look like now versus what it was before the pandemic. Coming out of that pandemic, all of us are more focused on creating memories. Those two things working together suggest strongly that no matter what happens in the White House, no matter what happens on Capitol Hill, the future of the industry is extremely bright. The question is, can we maximize the potential? It's there, it's going to grow. Are we going to inhibit the growth, or are we going to really seize it? I think when we look at the situation right now, it's a mixed bag, and we can get into some of what's coming out of Washington that's good, some of what's happening which is ridiculous, and we can touch on those things. But I think the trajectory for the industry is one that is pointing in the right direction. It's one we should feel good about. And I'm going to mention, I mentioned to Andy before, I heard somebody mention Airbnb before. And I guess I'm a little bit biased on something like that because I don't care if they stay in a hotel, stay in Airbnb, stay in a hostel. We just want to increase travel. But I came from, at one point, the gaming industry. I was in the gaming industry for 5 years. The gaming industry had a very finite mentality. It always felt the pie was only this big, and the only way to grow was to steal share from my competitor. And frankly, I hate when I hear that in the broader travel industry because it's just not true. It's not about Airbnb being the threat. It's not about somebody else being the threat. It's not about a finite world. This pie is growing. How do we help it grow even faster? And how do we continue, when we do that, to continue to get our fair share? Growth is very easy to come by. I think blaming others or looking at it through a negative lens is frankly the wrong mentality given the trajectory of our industry.
The short-term rental issue is the one that we disagree on, so we can talk.
I think short-term?
Most of us disagree on that.
Yes, exactly.
What about short-term?
Yes.
Our concern about short-term?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, my major concern is that we get taxed. I don't mean taxed in the true sense, but we get a lot of regulations, and Airbnb and short-term rentals slip by. I mean, why is that? KP, Rosanna?
Sure. I mean, I would say, where we do agree is that travel is good for everyone and where people stay. I think the hotel industry does differentiate itself. So I don't feel like it's a competition on that level. Where we have an issue is, to your very point, we're regulated at the state, local, and federal level, and there isn't a level playing field, especially when you think about the safety and security aspects and the taxation aspects. All we're saying is let everybody in the hospitality sector be judged at the same level, be taxed at the same level, and have those same level of obligations. And so that's something that we advocate for, together with the HOA, but also with labor. That's an issue that brings us together when many others, might take us apart.
KP on.
No, I think Rosanna hit all the high points there. At the end of the day, I personally am not against Airbnb, right? I think it actually brings more people to my particular neighborhood. And no, not all of them are bad, but there's always some bad apples.
What I see them, the whole parties.
Yeah, look, I'd rather have them at the Airbnb than at my hotel, right?
I agree.
I can tell you, spring break used to be a lot more exciting pre-Airbnb. That's just not the case anymore. Look, we just want to be able to have a industry where we can be successful. Airbnb is threatening that to a certain extent of one can pop up in my neighborhood like that. There's very little regulations that is stopping, like I can literally go out and buy a house across the street from one of my properties or a condo apartment and put up an Airbnb there, right? There's no ADA requirements, there's no safety requirements. We just want a level playing field, like you said. And, you know, we're all up for competition, right? We're all in competition, contrary to what you say, against each other on a daily basis. That doesn't worry us.
Yeah, you know, listen, I think at the end of the day, it's great to have a healthy discussion on whatever our differences are, but what's the most important thing when it comes time to build and develop and ensure this industry, we're all on the same page. I look at labor costs. I mean, we talked about this, KP, you and I talked about it at dinner a couple nights ago. Labor costs continues to go up. You heard this morning, is it more difficult to make money in a union hotel or non-union hotel? We're going to face all of those challenges. But KP, this is for you. What can we do as an industry to ensure that we spend more time trying to figure out what those problems are, get them resolved, so we can all be, we can all continue to make some money? And that can apply to all of us to give a shot at that.
Labor is something that I guess after COVID that came to a point of reality of saying, look, we're not just going to be able to do business the same way we've done pre-COVID, right? I know a lot of us don't like to discuss or even think about COVID anymore, but it's a fact of reality. Here's what has to happen, and just going to speak frankly here. If we don't get involved at the local levels, at the state levels, even federal levels, there's going to be somebody ready to grab our part of the pie like that. I mean, Rosanna, AHLA and AHOA have been working tirelessly in the city of Los Angeles to fight these $35 or $30 plus $8 minimum wage hikes. Why are a specific unionized group able to come in to do that? Majority of these hotels are not even union hotels, yet a union group was able to come in and get this passed with relative ease, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And now we're going in and trying to fight it
on the back end.
On the back end, that's absolutely right. We're here, we represent the industry, but if we don't have, and maybe lack of better words, an army behind us that show up at every single council meeting, that are not involved, we're going to have the same conversation next year, the year after, but I can guarantee you we're going to be talking about $50 minimum wages. Look, we can do so much, but it's your asset at the end of the day that you want to protect as well. You have to be involved. And it doesn't mean necessarily writing a $5,000 check everywhere you go. Host your city council members. Talk to your state officials. Get to know them and make sure, more importantly, they know you.
And you know what's interesting? I remember flying back and forth to New York when HL was working on that issue. And there is a happy medium. You know, we don't want it all, but we want people to be fair. And I think for us is to find that happy medium, negotiate so we all continue to do well. You know, the most important thing I tell folks, when you open a hotel or you build a hotel or you put people to work, one of the greatest pleasures we have is watching young people, old people, anybody else earning a living, being happy and taking care of their families. And I get awfully concerned, like in the case of New York, where they had this unfair restriction. But what I saw in New York every morning I flew in, forget the name of the park we all met at, or even on the calls, KP and Barad, where's Barad? Barad, remember this. We spend so many hours talking to folks and the elected officials, and it never stops. You know, and for us as an industry, we have a commitment to work together. Jeff, when I think about it, look 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 days or 5 years in the future, and this is for all of you. Where do you see us going? What do we need to do really, even beyond the issue of politics? What do we need to do together as us? How do we build this brand? Because that's what it is.
I think getting away from politics specifically, I think one of our biggest challenges, and it transcends all aspects, is we have an industry that is taken for granted. We all know that to be true. I don't know why it is the way it is, but there's just an assumption in this country that the travel industry gets by on its own. And I think you deal with that in the hotel community. Sure, you can pay these higher wages, you'll be fine. Convention and visitor bureaus deal with it as they cut their funding for marketing. People will just want to come here. That's what they do.
And visa costs too, Jeff. Think about visa costs to come to the U.S.,
right?
International travel.
We just added, the United States has the world's longest wait times to get an interview for a visa. The longest. In fact, in the Biden administration, we set a goal of getting all visa wait times down to 90 days. If we achieved that goal, we would have been last in the world. That's where we set our goal. Now, in the Trump administration, coming out of this reconciliation bill, we've just added a $250 fee that we made up out of thin air on everyone's visa. A family of 4, we're now going to charge you $1,000 to wait forever to get an interview for a visa to maybe come to the United States. Right, and there's just this assumption that people will do it, that it'll happen. And I think the biggest challenge for us as an industry, because we've been, frankly, bitching about this for years, but we haven't necessarily changed our strategy. The biggest challenge for us as an industry when we're sitting in this room 5 years from now is what have we done to elevate the perception of the industry, the appreciation for the industry, the willingness among policymakers and opinion leaders to fight for this industry. I think we have to acknowledge something we're telling isn't breaking through. Whether it's about the jobs, the economic impact, whatever it is, the strategy that we've employed for however many years has yielded whatever the result is today, and it's a result that we're all dissatisfied with. If we want a different result 5 years from now, we've got to come together and identify what is a different strategy that might achieve that, because doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, we all know what that is, right? So that, to me, is the big challenge, Andy, that we've got to get our arms around. If we want to have this industry be both respected and feared in the future, what are we going to do to change to achieve that?
I couldn't agree more, and have been talking the last 6 months with our board and our members about this need for us as an industry to not only come together, but to be more aggressive and proactive. Because if we are constantly fighting these fights in a reactive mode and waiting for a bad bill to drop and then trying to make it better and then telling our story and rushing to talk to members of Congress when it's too late or city officials, the results will always be mixed and not always go in our favor. We have to start laying that groundwork in a very different way and really being deliberate about how we do that. And that means to, what you both said, showing up, being visible, telling your story, getting to know your member of Congress and your city legislator and your mayors. But it also means that the business community needs to come together more often. We need strong business coalitions in every major market around the country to talk about the fact that in a city like Los Angeles, it's at the bottom of the list for getting back to pre-pandemic levels of tourism. No one is going to LA. No one is building new hotels in LA. And there hasn't been new development in Los Angeles for the last 10 years. And so when you think about that, and the city council is continuously adding these onerous workforce rules and wage increases, I have hotels that are shutting down. And to not be able to break through at a city council to get them to understand what that means, we need a thriving hotel industry if they're going to have a vibrant city, a vibrant downtown. And the fact that they haven't connected those dots is scary, frankly. So as an industry, we need to come together as a business community. We need to be at City Hall. We need to be promoting candidates and supporting candidates. Candidates should want our endorsement. It shouldn't just be them wanting, seeking the endorsement of the union. Where's our collective endorsement? We have oftentimes been too splintered, and it really is the time for us to change that tide and come together and take a longer view. This will take time. Elections are every 2 years, so every 2 years we need to be thinking about that, but together, funneling our money around supporting candidates who support us will matter even more.
Sure. You know what, when I look at growth cities, and I tell elected officials on a local level about this all the time, when you go to an airport and see a rental car center, you see all the infrastructures going around the airport. Most of that is paid by tourists, whether it's bed tax or the facility charges, but there's really no burden on the local taxpayers. And I shudder to think of what happened as that shrink, because what's going to happen, there'll be no more money to do anything else. We have another partner who's Brand USA, whose specific responsibility is to bring more people to the United States. And Jeff talked about visa wait time. We've been talking for that, Jeff, for years. Infrastructure in airports is a problem. I mean, typically people come into this country and they've got to really want to be here, because you not only take 90 days or longer to get a visa. I was on the phone 2 days ago with the U.S. Embassy in the Bahamas to figure out why it was taking so long for even to get student visas. And so, my concern is that I don't think people quite get the travel industry. I think we're #1 in the world, second only to healthcare in the United States. And I don't think we tell that story. Any idea how we can tell that story better? Let's forget the politics for a moment, but how do we tell the local consumer how great it is to have somebody come into your store, whether you're coming in from South America or Europe, spend a lot of money, come into your nightclubs, your restaurants. I mean, Brickell is still thriving, even though we hear that a recession is happening or coming. All the drug money's gone, guys. So all the real money's still here. What do you think we need to do as a group?
One of the things I've done to connect locally is something as simple as join the Chamber of Commerce.
No question.
Right? And just continuously tell our story, making sure that we're a part of the community, right? I'm based out of Santa Cruz, California. I've been there since 1993. We have deep, deep roots in our community, but you would be surprised on how many hospitality, specifically hotel owners, multiple are members, but not very many people actually show up to the meetings or are actively involved. Like I said earlier, writing a check, paying your dues, that's the easy part, right? That's set and forget it kind of thing. But you've got to tell your story. You've got to be involved. Showing up at the front desk or making sure the front desk agent shows up, just not enough in our business anymore.
Anything from either panelists that you think that's more difficult for us to resolve, either individually or collectively from a group standpoint? Any particular pet projects? My issues, I want more international travel. They stay longer, they spend more money. I think, am I right, John, Mark? Those guys spend more money when they come in, stay longer. And I think for domestic destinations, I'd love to see more state-to-state travel. I'm not sure where that market is going, but what do you think we can push the button on and say, I wish this would happen? Any idea?
So I'll give you a couple things, and some of it's happening, and I've got to give the administration credit on it, but let me touch on international and then domestic real quickly. We agree with you. International overseas travelers spend an average of $4,000 per person per visit. That compares to the average American who's spending about $500 per person per visit, or the average Canadian and Mexican, which is about $1,500 per person per visit. So that overseas traveler is of immensely greater value. We are in, though, a very difficult environment when it comes to attracting overseas visitors, because there are some in this administration who don't make a distinction between illegal people coming into the country and legal people coming into the country. They like some of the confusion that's out there. The fact that travelers around the world are now concerned that they come here, they could be detained or they could have their device searched. There are people within this administration who like that. That's the current that we're swimming against. Now, when it comes to the president and others, who is fixated on making the World Cup a success, making America 250 a success, making the Olympics in Los Angeles a success, there is an open ear to what do we need to do. The problem is it's hard to get through with the facts. They don't want to hear the facts that right now Canadian travel is down 26% to the United States. Western European travel is down 3.5% year over year. When you look at where Japan was before the pandemic, it is 51% lower today than it was in 2019. So the hard part is they don't want to hear some of these facts. Now, they've done some good things. This bill that just got passed, we put more money into customs officers in the airports to speed up processing. We made some changes that will help us expand the visa waiver program so we can bring people in visa-free to the United States. So they made some good steps, but then I mentioned the $250 fee that we put in place. It's going to be a tremendous deterrent. Andy mentioned Brand USA, which has a budget of up to $200 million a year to market the United States around the world. Congress cut that budget by 80% in this bill that just got finished. Right? So it's kind of one step forward, one step back right now, which is extremely challenging on the international inbound side. On the domestic side, the administration has done a couple things, and a lot of it is coming out of the Department of Transportation, who I would suggest, and Secretary Duffy, has been probably the most pro-travel proponent of our industry that we've ever seen. He just launched the Great American Road Trip to encourage Americans to get out on the road. He's going to 250 destinations around the country to showcase everything the U.S. has to offer. That's fantastic. That's exactly what we'd like to see a head of transportation doing. It took a tragedy, but he and others in the administration are now leading an effort to remake our antiquated air traffic control system. You know, the aviation system in this country, and it kind of goes back, and I'll stop this long monologue, but it goes back to, hey, why are we as an industry not taken seriously? We don't fight hard enough. I don't think it's just us that don't fight hard enough. I don't think our customer fights hard enough. Americans have been willing to tolerate an antiquated air traffic control system that is full of delays, cancellations, inefficiencies at TSA, because we're doing things the same way we did it in the weeks after 9/11, and travelers have tolerated it. If our customer is going to tolerate it, and we're not particularly vocal, I don't think we should be surprised that policymakers don't give us the same attention that they give other industries. That's beginning to shift, right? You see the investment now in building a new air traffic control system. In the past couple weeks, TSA has announced they're removing the shoe requirement. They're looking at lifting the liquid ban going through TSA. These are the types of incremental steps necessary, and I've got to give the administration a lot of credit for making these common sense reforms.
I think one other thing that's sort of related to this, you know, several years of big events, one area, and Ashley touched upon this a little earlier, is making sure that when those people come here, they're having a terrific experience. And I think part of that is looking at how many more open jobs we have than can fill, the need for increase in H-2B visas. Think about all your resort properties that rely on peak business travel, and how do you ensure that you have a workforce that is stable and certain that you can rely on to ensure that those experiences can be fulfilled. Absent that, we're seeing a lot of our members are talking about, you know, shutting down restaurants or limiting services, and so we want to make sure that that's not impacted during this wave of travel and tourism. And so Ashley's working really hard to get an increase in the cap, but more than that, I mean, We talk all the time about every year we're fighting for the same increase in the cap. At what point are they going to reform this antiquated, outdated approach to this visa process, which is a tried and true proven way to bring a legal workforce here? And it costs our owners a lot more money to do that because you have to go through so many steps. You have to prove that you can't hire an American worker for that same job. So that's one thing that we want to make sure that we can start adjusting as we go into this decade of big travel and big events.
Yeah, the problem is that Ashley's working too hard. She has us on phone calls. She has it in meetings. She's calling us about this stuff. But it's all good stuff, and I think it's great to have somebody that understands and have the pulse on the industry. I want to talk about people for a second. I heard yesterday I can travel around the world in this industry without leaving my office, the workforce, the hotel. We have so many people of so many different cultures, racial, languages, all working there. And Jeff, I remember this many years ago before you were at U.S. Travel, and the relationships you created. I was on the U.S. Travel board, and I went there, and I met a very special young lady who was head of a tourism in a state. That had to be, I had hair then, so it had to be quite a long time. But where's Rita? Rita McClinley, I saw earlier, she walked up. You begin to develop these relationships that go for years and decades from industry to industry. I mean, we were going to do a deal one day at Dulles Airport, and we were talking. We thought we had a great deal. And I said, wait a minute. I've got a colleague just outside of Dulles called Vinay Patel. Call Vinay. Vinay said, don't do it. The market is bad. I got a couple of hotels here, and they're not doing well. How do we continue to build and look at it from a people standpoint, and how do we expand those relationships? I'm going to challenge Laura Lee at AHOA, who's the president of the American Hotel, to keep us together, because I think the optics are, I don't just want this to be all four of us sitting on stage and talking points. We're all friends. I talked to Roseanne. Jeff called me one day, and I said, let's get together. And I called him with a moment's notice. I said, Jeff, I'm in D.C. You got a moment? And Stanley and I went out and spent some time with him. But how do we expand our people network? Because I think it's connecting to people that's so important. Any ideas? And KP, you have a huge membership in New Orleans a couple of months ago.
Yeah, no, just start by coming to AHOA-Con, right? It's the industry standard for like-minded hotel owners who want to expand not only networking, but their knowledge on the industry. We come to events like this to learn from each other, to get to know one another. I will bring something to the table that Jeff may not, or Rosanna may not, and I guarantee you they're going to bring a lot more to the table than I can offer. So I'm going to speak to people like this and learn as much as I can and make sure I pass that information on to anybody else I speak to. I want to pivot, Andy, just for 1 second, though. AHOA, HLA, NABHOOD, Latino Association, there's one thing that we absolutely do agree on, is that this is our industry and nobody else is going to protect it except for us. We may not always agree on every single issue out there, but at the core of all of these organizations is to advance our industry forward. With a little less than 3.5 minutes ago, get involved, stay involved, right? Can't stress this enough. Nobody is going to protect your property, your asset, with more passion than yourself. So look, we're going to be around, right? Talk to us. Get involved with all of us, please.
Any questions? Is there a microphone? Is somebody's walking around with a microphone? Where? Oh, there you go. Parat, you have a question before you leave the room? Good, you have a question, so I make sure.
Yeah, he's sneaky like that. You got to keep an eye on him.
Guy's sneaky.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gaia. I'm from the University of the Bahamas.
And I have two questions, if you don't mind. In what ways do international bonds influence or challenge local traditions and practices, and what are we doing to resolve them?
I'm sorry, the question.
Yeah.
You want me to read it again?
Please.
Okay. So I said, in what ways do international bonds influence or challenge local traditions and practices, and what are we doing to resolve them?
I think I heard the international bonds. Here's one of the best things, and it's the story we tell about international travel. Not only do they come here and spend more, not only do they stay longer, one of the dirty secrets of international travel is when you go somewhere, you develop an appreciation, an affinity for the people in that market. You develop an appreciation for the culture of that market. So when we look at the United States, one of our greatest public diplomacy tools, if we want to stay out of trouble around the world, one of the most important things we can do is bring more people to the United States to get to know us, to understand how we think, to understand how we operate. That is the single greatest public diplomacy thing we can do, and vice versa. The more that Americans are going outside the country, something that is increasing, the more we're seeing and understanding other cultures and getting out of our kind of naive world that we've lived in. I think from a public diplomacy standpoint, we're a hell of a lot better off.
Perfect. Another question over here.
Hi, good morning. I'm Siobhan Arline Bradley. I'm the president and CEO of the National Council of Negro Women. It's a civil rights organization based in D.C. We represent about 2 million African American women that are aligned through about 37 national organizations. And, sorry?
You said 2 million?
2 million.
Make sure you bring them to the hotels.
Well, that's exactly why I'm here.
Perfect.
But I want to dig into the comment about your customer base, because Black women scale and skew high on service industry and hospitality, particularly in service and hotels and travel. So have you considered your civil rights strategy, organizations that have members that could actually be advocating with you on the Hill? The Hill work that you're doing is great, but there's also those of us that lean in heavy on Capitol Hill with our relationships with our congressional leaders. Has there been any thought about your work with other institutions outside of the industry that can help your case?
Let me address that. The answer is yes. Ashley and I spent some time last year at the Congressional Black Caucus, and we made it a point to work with organizations like the Divine Nine, because we have a shared interest that they all may not be hotel, but the shared interest is a better community, a better society for America. And so that's what I consider, that's the pillar of our success. We know very well that we can't do it alone. So we reach out to organizations, and quite frankly, that's the reason why we're all sitting here. And it goes beyond just the industry of hotels, because restaurants, even car dealers, and I talk about our membership, the African American Hotel Ownership Group is comprised from people with all different industries. We go to the minority automobile dealers, and we talk to them. So you're right, collectively, we want to make it a better community, period. Anybody else want to tackle that?
I think you're exactly right. You know, going back to building a business community that supports each other, we would be happy to work with your organization. So I'm going to get your card after this.
You talk about chambers too, KP.
Yeah, no, just quickly saying that, and Jeff kind of said, is we need it's not just the hotel industry, that's hospitality. AHOA works with multiple different organizations out there, gas stations, supermarkets. You know, we're trying to touch this third rail about credit card fees right now, right? We've worked with multiple different sectors of what we would say hospitality with a collective good. So we'd love to be able to work with you as well.
I'll close with this. It's not our economic impact that differentiates us from other industries. It is not the number of people we employ that differentiates us from other industries. Those are the two things we've been emphasizing for decades. That's not what makes us stand out. What makes us stand out is the people, is the focus on hospitality. If you've worked in other industries, you've learned that, wow, huge economic impact, huge number of employees, huge scale, and no personality, none of the hospitality gene. And I think the question going forward is how do we work with groups like yours and others to emphasize what really makes this industry unique, not what makes us just like every other industry that's barking in your ear every day.
Is this going backwards or forwards? Are we over our time?
You're over.
That red light?
Continue going.
I mean, I was just trying to get the numbers, I thought. So, sorry. We are your best advocates. Join us, work with us. If you have any questions, we'll all be around a little bit later on. I've asked Rosanna to talk to students. We want to make sure that the industry continues to grow. Join me, ladies and gentlemen, in thanking this panel. Thank you, guys. This was great.
That was Doing Industry Business Collectively with Dr. Andy Ingram, Rosanna Mayetta, Jeff Freeman, and KP Patel. Our next session is the Executive Forum of View from the Top, thoughts and perspectives of industry leaders on a wide range of timely industry topics. Will be moderated by Esther Hertzfeld, Executive Director, Hotel Management Magazine and Questex. Our panelists are Charles Oswald of Aperture Hotels, Warren Fields of Pyramid Global Hospitality, Paul Cash of Wyndham Hotel and Resorts.